picture this scenario. It is Tuesday morning. You wake up, grab your phone, and before your eyes can even really focus properly, you see 10 different news notifications just stacked up on your lock screen.
Oh, yeah, we've all been there.
Right. Different apps, different logos, different publishers. But here's the kicker. They all see the exact same thing. And I don't just mean they're covering the same story. I mean the phrasing, the adjectives, even the sentence structure is
identical.
It's identical. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Like, is that a consensus on the truth? Or is it just an echo?
It is the illusion of consensus.
Yeah.
Really, it's a glitch in the matrix. And that echo is exactly what we are taking apart today. We are looking at a really fascinating project called ComPress.
ComPress. I actually love the name. It sounds, I don't know, intense, like something hydraulic.
It is intense. Think of it not as a blog or a regular news site, but as a forensic lab for the news cycle. The entire mission of this deep dive today, and the mission of ComPress, is to measure the distance between a corporate press release, what they actually call the source truth or the narrative, and the actual reporting that reaches you and me.
So we are moving away from just, reading the news to actually auditing the noise. We're asking, did the journalists actually do the work? Or did they just hit Control-C and Control-V?
Precisely. We are looking for the gap between what a company wants you to know and what is actually happening in reality. And to do that, we have to look at a specific case study from the source material. ComPress calls it Patient Zero.
Right, the Global Agri-Chemical Giant. This happened fairly recently in February 2026. And this is just the perfect example of why we need this kind of forensic analysis. Because if you just glanced at the headlines that morning, you would have thought this company was having the best day of its entire life.
It really is the perfect storm of spin. So let's set the scene for you. You have this massive global company. They release their quarterly data and announce a huge structural change. On the surface, the press release is just shouting about a 12% revenue increase and a sweeping merger to create a global platform.
It sounds fantastic. Growth, expansion, synergy. It ticks every single box for a shareholder. I mean, if I'm holding that stock and I see those words, I'm thinking, great, my portfolio is totally safe.
Exactly. That is the narrative.
Yeah.
But ComPress didn't look at the narrative. They looked at the forensic evidence. If you looked at the actual data, not the press release, but the actual balance sheet there, was a 43% drop in net profit. Profits nearly evaporated.
That is a massive discrepancy. Revenue is up, technically. They are merging. Everyone is high-fiving in the press release, but profits are down 43%. That is not a dip. That is a collapse.
It's a total disaster. And here is the reality check. The stock market isn't stupid. The hunters, the independent analysts who actually read the filings, they saw that number immediately. The stock crashed 13% that very same day.
So you have a reality where the business is bleeding money, but the story being told to the public is about future dominance.
And that is the central question of this deep dive. How did the media cover this? Did they report the crash? Did they tell you, hey, profits were down by almost half? Or did they just parrot the value unlocking narrative that the company fed them?
This is where it gets really, really interesting to me, because to answer that, ComPress uses some absolutely wild terminology. It is not your standard dry academic media criticism. They've built this glossary that uses Tamil-inspired concept to score news outlets, and honestly, it makes so much sense. It's funalytics.
It is fun, but it is scathing. It essentially turns media criticism into a scoreboard.
Yeah.
But before we get to the glossary, which I know you're excited about,
Oh, I can't wait.
we have to understand the magnitude of what they call the invisible crash.
Okay, let's unpack that. Walk us through the specific event with this agrichemical giant. How do you dress up a 43% loss as a win?
You utilize the source truth. The company issues its release. Now, this document is engineered to direct your attention. It's basically a magic trick. Look at the left hand so you don't see what the right hand is doing.
Misdirection.
Exactly. The bold text, the headlines, the pull quotes, they're all focused on keywords like unlock value, strategic synergy, and sweeping reorganization.
World's second largest platform. That was one of the phrases they used, right?
Correct. That is the shiny object. Look over here at this massive platform we are building. They framed this really complex merger-demerger dance as a massive positive for shareholders. Meanwhile, the bottom line was screaming for help.
So the market saw the bleeding. That 13% sell-off is the market saying, yeah, we don't buy the narrative. But if you opened your news app that morning, the headlines did not match the panic at all.
No, they didn't. The headlines matched the press release. And that brings us to the methodology. How do you hide a 43% profit drop? You don't hide it. You bury it.
Right.
You bury it under layers of what ComPress calls blaidu, which is confusing jargon, and bus, which is just hot air fluff.
Okay, we have to get into these terms now. This is my absolute favorite part of the compress methodology. Let's start with the most common offender, the Kili index.
The Kili, that's the Parrot.
Right. Kili is Tamil for parrot.
But there's a cultural nuance here that is really important to grasp.
Okay.
In Tamil, when you call someone a Kili or say they're reading like a parrot, it implies they are saying something because they were told to, not because they actually understood it. It's about a complete lack of agency.
Ah, so it's the Pollyanna cracker of journalism. It implies the reporter is just an empty vessel.
Exactly. The Kili index measures the echo factor. It calculates the exact percentage of a news report that is a verbatim, rote repetition of the press release.
So if I'm a reporter and I am on a tight deadline and I just copy-paste the CEO's quote and the company's summary, my Kili score goes through the roof.
It skyrockets. In the agrochemical case, ComPress found some major financial outlets with a Kili score of over 90%.
90%? That is not reporting. That's just transcription. Why even have a byline at that point?
You shouldn't. At that level, you are basically polishing the PR agency's shoes. You aren't adding value. You are just amplifying the signal. You are part of the marketing department, effectively.
Okay, so that is the Parrot. But the Parrot is usually a solo act. What happens when everyone does it? That brings us to the crows, the Kaka Brigade.
This one is visually hilarious but terrifying for a newsroom. Kaka means crow. And as you know, a group of crows is called a murder.
A murder of crows. Very ominous.
Highly ominous. The Kaka Brigade measures herd mentality. ComPress has this feature called the Kaka Alert. It triggers when 10 different outlets release the exact same headline within a 12-minute window.
That is the scenario I talked about in the intro. The notifications all popping up at once. It literally feels like a glitch in your phone.
That is the Kaka Brigade in action. Imagine 10 crows sitting on a wire all calling the exact same note at the exact same time.
And I want to dig into the psychology of this for a second. Because when I see 10 headlines that are identical, my brain defaults to trusting it. I assume it's verified.
That is the illusory truth effect. It creates a false sense of consensus. If you see 10 headlines that say, Agri-Giant unlocks value, your brain assumes, well, everyone agrees. CNN says it, Bloomberg says it, Reuters says it. It simply must be true.
But in reality, nobody agreed. They just all copied the exact same source document at the exact same time. It is a consensus of speed, not a consensus of verification.
Exactly. Being first often means being unoriginal. If you want to beat the competition by 2 seconds, you don't have time to analyze the balance sheet. You just join the brigade. You caw with the other crows.
That is so incredibly frustrating as a reader. And that leads us to the next metric, which sounds a bit like a penalty. Vetti Ottu.
VO. Yes, this is the laziness penalty. Vetti Ottu literally translates to cut and paste.
I feel like I definitely utilized the Vetti Ottu technique on a few term papers back in the day.
Oh, we all have. But in journalism, it is fatal to your credibility. This metric measures large blocks of unedited corporate text pasted directly into the report. We aren't talking about pull quotes here. We are talking about entire paragraphs of context, background, and strategy lifted straight from the PDF.
And this creates an archetype, doesn't it? The stenographer.
Yes. The Stenographer is an outlet that scores incredibly high on VO. They act as a free billboard for the company. If the company says, we are the market leaders in sustainable innovation, the stenographer types, they are the market leaders in sustainable innovation. No questions asked.
It's wild that this passes for news, but there is a subtler one, right? The URI check.
The URI. This relates to modifiers and adjectives. This is a really clever test because it exposes how contagious PR language actually is. The question is, did the reporter find their own adjectives, or did they swallow the PRs?
Oh, this is good. Because companies love their specific adjectives. Robust, seamless, world-class.
Yes. In the agrochemical case, the magic word was sweeping. The press release called it a sweeping reorganization.
And let me guess, the reporters loved it.
It was wildly contagious. ComPress found that 80% of the outlets used the specific word sweeping in their lead paragraph.
That is embarrassing. It's like they all went to the exact same vocabulary buffet and only took one dish.
It shows a complete lack of critical thinking. Sweeping is an opinion. It is the company's opinion of their own action. If a journalist uses it without quoting it, they are adopting that corporate opinion as an objective fact.
Wow. Okay, so we've got parrots, crows, cut and pastors, and adjective borrowers. But we still need to talk about the content itself. How did they hide the bad stuff? That 43% profit drop. How do you mask a disaster like that in plain sight?
That brings us to the content metrics. Hot air versus the blade.
Tell me about bus.
Bus is the Pori index.
Now, for those who don't know, a pori is that delicious, deep-fried Indian bread that puffs up huge.
Exactly. It looks massive on the plate. It looks like a feast. But if you poke it with a sork, bus,
Yeah.
that is the onomatopoeic sound of the air escaping.
Yeah.
It deflates instantly.
I love that image. The article looks big and substantial, but it's completely empty inside.
The Pori index measures fluff. It looks for words like synergy, robust, transformative, strategic paradigm.
Oh, the corporate bingo words, the words that sound so important but mean absolutely nothing.
Right. An outlet that writes a 1,000-word article but says nothing of substance has a high bus score. They are the air blower. They pump up the narrative so it looks significant, but there was no meat inside.
And the opposite of that is the blade.
Bladu. But in this context, it is definitely not a compliment. Bladu refers to boring, confusing, or useless language. It is a deliberate strategy.
Wait, how is boring a strategy? Usually writers want to be exciting and keep your attention.
Not if you have bad news. If you have a 43% profit drop, you do not want people to read it. So you wrap it in Bladu. You use dense, legalistic jargon to make the reader's eyes just glaze over. It is weaponized boredom.
Give me a specific example from the case study. How did the Agri-Giant utilize the blade?
So a normal human would say, we lost money because the restructuring was expensive. Simple, clear.
Right. That makes sense.
But the press release didn't say that. Instead, it directed attention to the, quote, composite scheme of arrangement under sections 230 to 232 of the Companies Act.
Oh, wow. Yeah, my brain just shut off. I stopped listening halfway through that sentence.
That is the point. It cuts the reader's interest. It severs the connection between the reader and the data. You stop reading before you ever find the profit number because the sentence is just too painful to get through.
That is truly diabolical. It is hiding the smoking gun inside a stack of dry instruction manuals.
Exactly. So ComPress takes all these metrics, the Parrot, the Crow, the cut paste, the hot air, and the boring blade, and combines them into one definitive score, the C score.
The ComPress score.
The target is 100. That represents pure journalistic independence.
Okay, so every journalist starts at 100.
And then you start subtracting. You subtract big points for Parrot behavior, the Kili. You subtract for cut and paste, VO. You subtract for hot air bus and jargon Bladu.
So let's look at the scoreboard for the Agri-Chemical Giant, who actually survived the audit. Walk us through the archetypes.
Well, at the very top, you had the hunter. In this case, it was an outlet ComPress just calls the Legacy Daily. They scored an 86.
That is a solid score. What did they do right?
They had a very low Kili score, around 22%. They didn't just rewrite the press release. They found the profit drop immediately it was actually in their headline.
Mm-hmm.
And they ignored the synergy fluff entirely. They basically looked at the press release, said, nice try, and went straight to the numbers.
I like the hunter. We definitely need more hunters out there. Who was in the middle of the pack?
You had the Blade Runner, score of 68. They cut through the jargon. They still followed the crowd occasionally. They weren't totally independent, but they weren't parrots either. They represent the average business desk, trying to do a good job, but maybe rushed for time.
And then we get to the bottom of the barrel.
The echo chamber. An archetype like the Pink Giant, a major financial paper. Score, 42. Extremely high Kili score of 65%. If the PR said the move was unprecedented, they typed unprecedented. They were just bouncing the sound around the room.
And the absolute worst.
The stenographer. ComPress highlighted a tech newswire that scored an 18.
18 out of 100. That is painful. That is barely even showing up to work.
It's a critical failure. They had a 92% VO score. That means 92% of their article was a direct copy-paste from the company's PDF.
At that point, why even pay a subscription to that outlet? You can just get the PDF from the company website for free.
Exactly. It is literally a free billboard.
Hearing all of this, I imagine the vibe inside these newsrooms is, well, it's got to be stressful, especially if they know they're being audited by something like ComPress.
Oh, absolutely. The sources paint this vivid picture of what they call the panic at 3 p.m.
3 p.m. is when the day is really dragging, right?
It's the afternoon editorial meeting. Imagine a grim silence falling over the newsroom. The analytics bot chimes in and says, guys, our story is a Kili report. We are at 90% Parrot mode.
Ouch. That has got to sting the ego.
It's the sudden realization that you've been caught being lazy. And then someone else shouts, we've joined the Kaka Brigade. Look at the screen. 10 outlets, 10 identical headlines.
The realization that being first just meant being invisible, because you look exactly like everyone else on the feed.
That is the true danger. In the rush to be part of the breaking news, they became indistinguishable. And that leads to a frantic scramble to rewrite the leads, to find a unique angle, to try and sound like the hunter, but it is usually too late. The echo is already out there in the world.
It really makes you think about what we consume on a daily basis. We scroll so fast, we read the headline, and we just move on. But that headline might just be a Kili, a parrot squawking exactly what it was told to squawk.
And that is exactly why contrast matters. It is not just about shaming lazy journalists, it's about synthesis.
Yeah?
You and me, the readers, we need to understand that the distance between the press release and the truth is where the actual story lives.
The story isn't the release itself. The story is the gap.
Yes, the story is why the profit dropped 43% while revenue went up. The story is why the stock crashed when the company promised value unlocking. If you just read the Parrot report, you miss the crash entirely until your own portfolio takes a hit.
So what is the takeaway here for you listening? Most people aren't running a forensic media lab in their basement. They're just trying to stay informed. How do we apply this?
The takeaway is to start running your own mental Uri check. Next time you read a headline, pause for a second. Look at the adjectives.
Ask yourself, is this sweeping because it is actually sweeping, or just because the company said so?
Right. Are you reading a hunter, or are you sitting in an echo chamber? If you see the exact same headline on 3 different sites, that is a hook alert. That is a warning sign, not a confirmation. It means nobody had checked the facts yet. They have just checked the copy-paste function.
It is empowering in a weird way.
Yeah.
Once you see the strings, the Kili, the pourries, the cut and paste, you really can't unsee them. You start reading the news like an auditor.
You do.
Okay.
And I want to leave everyone with this final thought on the topic. The concept of the Kili of the parrot isn't just a cute, quirky metric. It is actually a profound insult.
How so?
In the context of news, calling a reporter a Kili implies they are a machine, just a recording device. It strips them of their humanity, their intellect, their ability to question authority. The entire goal of journalism and the goal of being an informed citizen is to break that echo, to stop being a machine that processes input and start being a human that interrogates it.
That is powerful. Don't be the Kili, be the hunter.
Be the hunter. But think about this too, something the sources hint at but that really stuck with me. If the reporter is acting like a Kili, just a machine copying a corporate narrative, and nowadays that press release was probably drafted by an AI in the first place,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
then who is actually talking to who? We're just watching algorithms echo other algorithms. The human element is completely erased from the equation. Where's the human truth in that?
Man, that is a chilling thought to end on. Bot-to-bot communication disguised as news.
Exactly.
Well, I am going to go check my own emails now and see how much hot air I have been sending out today. Hopefully my personal C-score is passing.
Just avoid the words synergy and paradigm shift, and I think you'll be fine.
Deal. Thanks for diving in with us today. We will see you on the next one.